I've been thinking a lot lately about how much of our lives we spend trying to meet other people's expectations. How much energy we burn seeking approval, people-pleasing, worrying endlessly about what others think. And then I came across The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga, a book rooted in Adlerian psychology that promises something radical: personal freedom, psychological freedom. The kind that comes when you finally experience freedom from other people's expectations, stop caring what people think, and start living life on your own terms. I'll be honest. When I first picked up The Courage to be Disliked, I expected another self-help book full of affirmations and surface-level advice. What I got instead was a philosophical dialogue that genuinely shook me. Kishimi and Koga structure the entire book as a conversation between a philosopher and a skeptical young man, and that format alone made the ideas land differently. It felt less like being lectured and more like being invited into a deep, uncomfortable conversation about freedom and responsibility. The book is grounded in the teachings of Alfred Adler, a psychologist whose ideas are far less popular than Freud's, but I'd argue far more liberating. What surprised me most was how confrontational the book is, not in a harsh way, but in its refusal to let you hide behind excuses. Kishimi and Koga don't coddle you. They ask, what if your past does not define you? What if trauma doesn't control your life? What if you've been using your emotions as tools to avoid change? These aren't comfortable questions, but they're the kind that stay with you long after you close the book. What the authors set out to explore is whether it's truly possible to live with absolute freedom, and what that freedom costs. And the answer is surprisingly simple, but not easy. It costs your need for approval. That's exactly where the courage comes in. One of the first ideas that really struck me was Adler's concept of teleology versus etiology. Most psychology focuses on why we are the way we are, our childhood, our trauma, our formative experiences. Adlerian psychology flips that idea completely. It says we are not controlled by our past, we are driven by our goals. We don't act because of what happened to us, we act because of what we want to achieve. That realization hit hard for me. I noticed how often I told myself stories like, I'm anxious because of what happened to me, when in reality I was choosing anxiety as a way to avoid taking risks. Adler doesn't deny pain, but he refuses to let it become an excuse. The philosopher in the book explains that emotions don't control us, we summon them. Anger, for example, isn't something that hijacks you. You get angry because anger serves a purpose in that moment, maybe to dominate a conversation, maybe to avoid vulnerability. That idea felt deeply uncomfortable at first, but also strangely empowering. Because if I'm choosing my emotional responses, even unconsciously, then I can also choose differently. Another concept that fundamentally shifted my perspective was the separation of tasks. This is at the heart of the book's message about freedom from other people's expectations. Adler teaches that every interpersonal conflict comes from intruding on someone else's task, or letting them intrude on yours. Whose task is it if someone dislikes you? Theirs. Whose task is it to live your life authentically? Yours. You can't control how others perceive you, and trying to do so is a form of self-betrayal. This was one of those moments where I had to stop and sit with the idea. I realized how much of my life I'd spent managing other people's opinions, and the book was gently but firmly saying, "Stop, that's not your job." What I loved most was how Kishimi and Koga redefine courage. Not as rebellion or defiance, but as the quiet strength to be disliked. To move forward even when disapproval is guaranteed. To accept that living freely means not everyone will understand you, agree with you, or even like you, and that this is not a failure, but a sign of growth. There's a line in the book that stayed with me long after I finished it. Freedom is being disliked by other people. That single sentence captures the entire philosophy. The authors also talk about contribution and community feeling, how true happiness doesn't come from obsessing over yourself, but from feeling useful to others. But the key difference here is motivation. You don't contribute to earn approval. You contribute because it aligns with your sense of purpose. There's a quiet paradox in this idea. You gain freedom by letting go of approval, and you gain meaning by giving without needing recognition. Throughout the book, I kept returning to one central truth. Taking responsibility for your life is the ultimate act of freedom. Not blaming your parents. Not blaming your circumstances. Not waiting for permission to change. Just deciding today that you're going to live differently. If you apply the ideas in The Courage to Be Disliked, I genuinely believe your life will look different. You'll stop performing. You'll stop bending yourself into shapes that don't fit just to avoid conflict. Some relationships will deepen, others may fall away, and that's part of the process. You'll learn to sit with the discomfort of not being universally liked, and in that discomfort, you'll find a calm, grounded sense of peace. This book won't make your life easier, but it will make it yours. And that kind of freedom, quiet, earned, and intentional, is worth fighting for. If this resonated with you, like and subscribe to Well-Read Club for more book breakdowns and mindset insights that help you live more freely.